Namaskar, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the 25th edition of the National Youth Festival. My name is Sahibjeet Kaur, and thank you so very much for joining in today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate this occasion to commemorate the birth anniversary of a perpetual youth icon and visionary, Swami Vivekananda. But, ladies and gentlemen, at the same time, we also celebrate an idea, the idea to grow together as a nation through experience, to create through participation, and of course, to learn from all what diversity has to offer. So, thank you so very much for joining in today. Ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate the occasion in a rather unique manner, we've collected data in the form of essays from all across the country. And we've managed to put it in a very unique and a very amazing video. So I'd like to share an AV with you called Mere Sapno Ka Bharat. Ladies and gentlemen, for our next session, we are going to continue with the lineage of homegrown intellectuals and thinkers as we delve on a famous line, futures in the past, diving into the Vedic wisdom for a sustainable future. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a fact known to humankind that the Vedas are the world's oldest known literature to the humankind, and they contain wisdom unparalleled to any other. Swami Vivekananda believed that science and rationality occupy crucial space. And not just that, it also must be deeply connected with the country's own ethos and history. And to shed light on the same, ladies and gentlemen, our speaker for the session is a world-renowned yatra guide as we undertake the journey with him onto our glorious past. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sri Dushyant Shridhar, author and subject expert in Vedic wisdom. Let's get on this journey to know more about our India, the land of mysteries, the land of culture. Welcome, Dushyant.
Namaskaram. Thank you, Ms. Kaur. My obeisances to this beautiful motherland, Bharata Desham. I am grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, the PMO, Minister Shri Anurag Thakur, and all the volunteers and integral members of this entire National Youth Festival that is being virtually held. Had it been a normal circumstance, I would have been in my very favorite Puducherry. Nevertheless, we can't crib or complain when the world and its people, the humanity is undergoing this pandemic. We should also embrace this situation with all precautions. Thank you for the introduction, the magnanimity with which I've been called. While I'm addressing the youth who have gathered in lakhs in their respective places to listen to these sessions, I hope the little jnanam the knowledge that I have bequeathed from my acharyas can be shared across the length and breadth of this nation virtually. While speaking about our motherland, Srimad Ramayanam forms a very integral part to our understanding. In Srimad Ramayanam, we have this verse which goes like, Mitrani dhana dhanyani prajanam sammatani va janani janma bhumischa swargadapi gariyasi. So this is Bharadwaja Vachanam, words spoken by Sri Bharadwaja Maharishi in Yuddha Kandam. He says, yes, friends, family do matter to an individual. But what matters most? Janani, the one who has given birth to us. Interestingly, I'm sure my friends who are attending this session will appreciate. In the alphabet, in the letter system of the Sanskritam alphabet or most other languages, we have the letters Pa, Pa, Ba, Bha, Ma. So in the precedence, the letter Pa comes first. The letter Ma comes last in this particular series. So it is Pa for Pita, the father. Ma for Mata, the mother. But when Vedam proclaims, it doesn't say Pitrudevo Bhava and Matrudevo Bhava. It goes against the order. It says Matrudevo Bhava and then Pitrudevo Bhava. Though Pa comes before Ma, still Mata comes before Pita. So mother occupies a very, very significant position in the Vedic civilization. Why alone the Vedic civilization? You go to the West, they still refer to the country as the motherland, the language that we speak as the mother tongue. So mother becomes very important. We must all remember the teachings of a great visionary and a philosopher, Sri Adi Shankaracharya, who states in Matrika Panchakam, Astam tavadiyam prasuti samaye durvara shulavyatha nairuchyam tanusoshanam malamayi shayyacha samvatsari. Those of my friends who are listening from the land of Kerala should be very proud, and I'm sure they will be delighted that Adi Shankara was given to this world from the land of Kerala. He was born in this beautiful village called Kaladi. He, while propitiating his mother, says, Astam tavadiyam prasuti tamaye durvara shulavyata. Let us take a trishulam, a trident that is made in cast iron, and then put it into blazing fire. Take it and then insert it into a person's womb. Can you even imagine the pain that the person undergoes? So Acharya says it is the same pain what a mother undergoes while she has to deliver her child, be it the daughter or the son. Shula, Nairuchyam, Talasoshanam, Malamai. It doesn't stop there. The pain doesn't stop there. The stink of the excreta that the child gives for the next 1 year, she is the one who cleans it. She is my mother. So all of us should learn how to respect our mother from the Vedic thoughts. Nevertheless, Ramayanam doesn't stop there. It says, Janani, mother, Janma Bhumischa. The motherland at times is even more important than the mother. Why? Because the mother absolutely carries us with the love and affection in her womb for a period, a gestation. 3 trimesters is what most doctors say, 3 into 3, 9, or probably the 10th month. Not beyond that. Whereas this motherland, Mata Bhumi, is supporting us all through her life. So Srimad Ramayanam, a work which is regarded as ancient or probably even more ancient than most of the other scriptures that we can think of in the ancient Vedic civilization, states, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swargadapi Gariyasi. So the word Janani, mother, is an upalakshanam, means it tries to bring a lot of people under its own umbrella, which is the father, the preceptors, our gurus, right from the gurus who have taught us from the kindergarten to our graduation, post-graduation, and to the guides who may guide us during our doctoral research. Then It also includes our relatives and friends. What does Janma Bhoomi include? So that will be the topic of this session. What does the word Janma Bhoomi include? So while I refer to Janma Bhoomi, I'm referring to the vast, undivided Bharata, the Indian subcontinent. Of course, there are many nations, many countries that have come in the recent past. Let us include that landmass as well, because most of our ancestors who researched in mathematics, in the area of arts, music, dance, architecture that we can perceive and see, they all come from the larger Indian subcontinent, which is referred to as Bharata Kandam or Bharata Varsham or Bharatam. So while we speak of geography, our understanding today is based on the new technological tools that we use. For example, imagine today I have to travel from point A to point B. I am aware of point A because that is where I am there. Point B, I do not know where it is. So I type it out in the Google and click directions. It will ask me whether you want to travel by the four-wheeler car, you want to walk it down, or you want to use the train. So there are so many means, upayam, which is given. And then I select the upayam, that is the means. And then it will show me the distance and the time taken now. So we are in such an advanced, let us say advanced in our own understanding and definition of technology that aids us, that supports us. But imagine 200, 300, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 years back. They didn't have Google Maps. They didn't have one of the ways, the app from the Middle East showing them the ways. Then how did they understand geography? Well, I'll just give you a few instances how accurate they were in understanding geography. Now, I will just read out a few lines from Srimad Ramayanam, Adi Kavi, Valmiki's Adi Kavyam. Sahasra Shirasam Vindhyam Nanadruma Lata Ayutam Narmadancha Nadim Ramya Mahoraga Nirshevitam. So while the monkeys which were stationed in the region called Kishkinta, which now is the Bellary district or the ruins of Vijayanagara Empire called Hampi, the then excommunicated prince who later became the king, Sugriva, tells his close friend Hanuman and the other monkeys who were to go in different directions in search of Sita. So he has to give them the topography, the geographical details. So he mentions the names of the rivers one after the other in the geographical order. He goes so much into the specific while dealing with the theme that goes in the south, because it was largely believed then as well that Sita could have not gone east, nor west, or north. She could have largely gone to the southern direction. That is when Valmiki says, through the words of Sugriva, Tasya asinam nagasya agre malayasya mahojasam drakshyatha aditya sankasham agastyam rishi sattamam. O you monkeys, as you go down and you reach the very green, thick ghats of the Western Ghats, the Sahyadris, you will see the Malaya Parvatam. So he calls them Malaya. Incidentally, the same name is used by Jayadeva, the 11th century poet who gave us Gita Govindam from the region of Odisha. So from Kalinga Desham, he tells Lalita Lavanga Lata Parishilana Malaya Samire. So Malaya is the word used. Further, Valmiki states, in this mountain, in one of its peaks, is Agastya who has gone. If you remember, a minute and 7 seconds back, I spoke about a shlokam where I said Vindhyam. Vindhyas are those range of hills that you can see in the central part of our country. So there was a rishi who is said to have believed to have stopped the growth, the further growth of the Vindhya ranges. Since he stopped the growth of the mountains which are referred to as Aga, he was called Agastya. So Agastya Rishi performed penance, austerities on the peak of a mountain in the southern direction is what Valmiki says. After that, the next shloka, the next verse, you will all be astonished, my dear friends. He says, Tataha tena abhugnataha abhyanugnataha prasannena mahatmana tamraparaniim graha jushtam. You will see the origin of the river Tamraparani, he says. Tamraparani is a river that goes in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. And the previous verse is where he mentions about a mountain peak where Agastya, the Rishi, was performing austerities. You will all be surprised. This river called Tamraparani that you see in Tamil Nadu today has its origin in the mountain called Agasthyar Kudam, which is in Western Ghats. So today, while we speak of Google Maps and yet we are handicapped as to which direction we can go, years, millenniums back, there is a mention very clearly of the mountain, of the rivers. Well, you may be wondering, sir, what is so surprising if I know about Narmada, Kaveri, Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, which are rivers that flow, that I can perceive? Well, 1600 years, roughly 1600 years before, so between the 1st and the 5th century, is when most research scholars opine Mahakavi Kalidasa must have lived. So in his beautiful work, a poetry, Kavyam, called as Kumara Sambhavam, Kalidasa states, Santanaka Kirana Mahapatham Tat Chinam Shukaihi Kalpita Setumalam Bhasojwala Kanchana Torananam Thanantaram Swargam Ivaba Bhase. So it was the beautiful celebration between Lord Shiva, of the Lord of Himalayas, and the daughter of the Himalayas called Parvati, who's called Parvatavartini. So in this grandeur, the pomp and show that was showcased to the public between the marriage of Lord Shiva with goddess Parvati, it is said, Kalidasa states, that people were wearing nice silk. The flags were fluttering high with fine silk. Now he has to tell how fine it is. See, if you're a poet, you will have to rely a lot on very meaningful and relishable and cherishable similes and metaphors. தமிழ் மொழியில் யாரெல்லாம் தமிழகத்திலிருந்து பார்த்து கொண்டிருக்கிறீர்களோ உங்களுக்கு தெரியும், உவமை என்பது ரொம்ப முக்கியம். So for those of you who are listening from the state of Tamil Nadu or Puducherry, the hosting union territory, you will know that similes are very important. जैसे कि हिंदी में बोलते हैं उपमा, उसी तरह the simile is very important. You know what Kalidasa says? That chinam shukaihi kalpita setumalam. So he says that the silk was like China silk. So 1600 years before, Kalidasa had a very good understanding of the geographies that were neighboring us. Today, we may have questions as to why did he celebrate China? Why did he celebrate Pakistan? Remember, as people of this land, we should never have grudge against the citizens of any country, because the citizens of each and every country are very much like us. They are peace-loving. Though their state policies could be different, the mention of China should give us that pride, because Kalidasa mentions so very clearly about China's silk. So China was known, silk was known, and silk from China was known. So the understanding of geography, the understanding of the products that matter to each and every geography is immense. Now, I have described about how Valmiki's understanding, Valmiki was a poet who lived and largely grew up in the north part of India, the northern India. So he mentions of rivers that flow in the southern tip of India, like Tamraparani, Kaveri, Krishnaveni, Narmada, and so on. And he talks about the peaks. Now, on the converse, probably some of you may ask, what about people who live down south? Did they have an understanding of the happenings in the north? I will give you a few lines from one of the most cherished and loved Tamil works. So Tamil is the language spoken in Tamil Nadu and Puducherry, largely spoken. And in its old history and collection of the archives that we see, there is a beautiful work called as Silappadigaram. Silambu in Tamil means anklet. Nupuram. Adhikaram means the story of the anklet. Well, in that particular literature, that particular kavyam called as Silappadigaram, the poet Ilangovadigal, largely believed to be a person who nurtured and followed the religion of Jainism, states, Vadavarayai Mattaki Vasukiyai Nanaki. He says, while the ocean was being churned, an old mountain called Mandara was used as the stick, the churning rod. And the rope was none but a snake called as Vasuki. So people in the south, roughly 1800 to 2000 years before, had a very good understanding of Kurmavataram, which is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavata Mahapuranam, Srimad Ramayanam, and Sri Mahabharata. Then he says, Irandadiyan Muvulagum Irultira Nadandanaye. That one who came and measured the earth. So he talks of the incarnation of the Lord as Vamana, the dwarf, and Trivikrama, largely believed to be born in Siddhashramam in Bihar, and who went to Bali Chakravarti's Yajnavatika, the place where the sacrifice was performed, which is Baruch or Bhrigu Kacham, currently in the state of Gujarat. So there was a very good understanding of Vamana Avataram as well. Now, there is another line where he says, Taviya Sevadi Cheppa Thambiyodum Kaan Pondu. Along with his brother, he went to the forest and then won over Ravana, the king, then of the island nation called as Lanka. So they had a very good understanding of Ramayanam as well. So be it the incarnations of the Lord, which largely happened in the north, was very well understood, comprehensible, commonly understood amongst the citizens of the south. So the understanding of the geography of the north by people who composed the south, the understanding of the southern happenings by people in the north is very well evident. So geography
love this.
was never a problem. Now, coming to languages, you may be wondering, why should I be using so many languages? I can just speak in English. Today, the most astonishing part, and probably I would say a bit of something that can cause melancholy or sadness, is to address the lakhs of youth volunteers today, the young minds today, across the length and breadth of our country, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, right from Arunachal Pradesh to Gujarat. I am using a language that was largely given to us by the Britishers. We have had a plethora of Indian languages. So what should we do to revive our own classical languages? Right from the languages in the north, to the languages in the northeast, to the languages in the south, to the west, is even if we are not experts in those languages, I can never become a Tiruvalluvar of the Tamil language. I can never become a Basavanna of the Kannada language. I can never match Tagore's mastery in the Bengali language. I can never master Tulsidasa's understanding of the languages Awadhi that was spoken largely in the parts of Uttar Pradesh and in the north. I can never match the eloquence of Iriyaman Thambi, who spoke Malayalam so well during and before the times of Swati Tirunal in the state of Kerala. I can never match the eloquence and the grandeur what Krishnadevaraya, the great administrator of the Vijayanagara Empire, gave us in his magnum opus called Amukta of the Telugu language. Nevertheless, each of us can at least learn the basics of any language. So today, when I speak about our motherland, you will all be so happy to note that a poet in the Bengali language says, Dhono dhanya pushpe bhora amar dere boshundhara tahar maje ache deshek shokol desher shera. So while he talks about the motherland, he says, this land is blessed with so much of wealth and prosperity. A lot of my Bengali friends will be wondering, oh, well, his Bengali is not that bad. Or you may even say that his Bengali is not that good. Whether it is not, the question is not whether it is good or bad. The question is how much I love that language. Though it is not my mother tongue, I still love Bengali. Though Telugu is not my mother tongue, I still love Telugu. I can still quote Telugu. So our understanding of each other's languages should improve. When we understand the language, there'll be a pertinent question here. What is the use of learning a language? When we understand the nuances of every language, we start getting a lot of things along with it for free. We start understanding the culture of that land. We start understanding the cuisine of that land. We start understanding the dress code of that land. We start understanding the basic sentiments of that land. Well, in the 16th century, a poet called Venkatadhwari Kavi in a Sanskrit work says, the tongue of goddess Mahalakshmi is red. While giving a simile to that redness, you know what he says? It is like the spicy food what the people of Andhra love. So when you have something spicy, either your tongue or even your face may turn pink or red, right? So if he has to give a comparison, he gives it based on the cuisine. So the understanding of what people had for their food is also very well found in our scriptures. Well, here is where, from geography, from the concept of languages, we need to go slightly into the concept of sciences and maths. Today, our question could be, were there mathematicians in our Bharata Desham? Simple, one thing if I have to say, each of us whose ancestors would have lived in this country, each of them was a mathematician. You'll all be surprised. And you may think I'm just throwing something that is coming out of my mind. No. There is a ritual called Agni Hotram. A lot of my friends who are listening to this may know a lot about this. If I have to give in simple terms, those are havans performed with the fire. So, which is a sacrifice, a homam or yajnam. So, this is a fire ritual which was performed largely by married men in those days. Grihasthashramam. Grihasthas used to perform Agni Hotram. And it used to have 3 installments of the day. So, in the morning, I would perform Agni Hotram. In the afternoon, I would perform Agni Hotram. And in the evening, I would perform Agni Hotram. So for performing each of these, there were different places allocated. So the place where I used to perform, the Yajna Kundam, the Vedika, would be circular for one, square for the other, maybe semicircle for the other. So while designing the Yajna Kundams, they had to follow a certain measurement, for which a great mathematician, a celebrated mathematician, around the 4th and the 5th century CE, around that period, called Aryabhatta. His work called Aryabhatiyam is very famous amongst research scholars. He states how the Yajna Kundam must be constructed. It's a simple case of civil manual construction. So he says, construct the Yajna Kundam, which is square in shape. We know what is square in shape. Side into side is the area of the square. That is understood, easily constructible, buildable. Then he says, use the same area of the square should be used for the circle. This is where comes the problem. If this is side into side, I have to equate it in the RHS with the area of a circle. What is the area of a circle? Pi r square. So there is a radius which I have to multiply with again the same radius into a value called pi. So how will I arrive at the value pi, which is generally a non-terminating decimal? So Aryabhatta states this in the form of a shloka, a verse in Sanskritam. He says, Chaturadhikam shatam ashtagunam dvasashti tatha sahasranam. So he gives us a number system. He says, Chatur adhika shatam. Shata in Sanskritam means 100. Shatamanam bhavati shata yah purusha shatendriyaha. When the elders bless us, who are the young people desiring the blessings of the elders, they'll say, Shatamanam bhavati. For your intent to serve your motherland and your nation, may you should live for 100 years. So Shata is 100. Aryabhatta says, Chatur adhika shatam. 4 more than 100, which is 100 plus 4, 104. Chaturadhika shatam. Then he continues, Ashta gunam. Gunam in Sanskrit means quality. जैसे कि हम हिंदी में पूछते हैं, उसका गुण क्या है? उसके पास गुण है क्या? Does he have good qualities? गुण का अर्थ होता है quality. Kannadadalli heluvaganu guna anta helidre in the Kannada language as well, guna means quality. In Tamil also quality. But you know the other meaning for gunam, you'll all be surprised. It is multiplication. So ashta gunam, ashta is 8. We say ashta lakshmi, right? So ashta lakshmi 8. So 8 into 104. So it is 832. Correct? Then he says add it along with Dwa Sashti. Sashti in Sanskritam. Shashti means 60. Dwa Shashti means you have to keep that 2 along with that 60, which is 62. Tatha Sahasranam, which is you'll have to add that 1000, thereby making it 62,000. So 62,000 plus 832 will give us 62,832. He doesn't stop there. He says divided by Ayuta Dvaya Vishkambhayasyanno. Ayuta Dvaya, Ayutam is 10,000. Dvaya is 2. Ayuta Dvaya is 20,000. So he says 62,832 divided by 20,000. He says Vritta Parinaha. So you will get one value with which you will have to use that value to create the circle. You know what is that 62,832 divided by 20,000? Which is 3.14, which is the value of pi. So while describing the construction, casually while describing the construction of the Yajna Kundam, the Vedika, Aryabhatta is so clear describing the value of pi. So mathematics was not a separate subject for our ancestors. It was integrated along with their daily life. Well, the very famous Hanuman Chalisa, who will not know Hanuman Chalisa? Whatever language be it, people across the country recite it with so much of devotion. There, while Tulasidasa describes how Hanuman, thinking the rising sun to be the famous, you know, for those of them who are listening from the state of Maharashtra, you will all be so happy to note that one of the fruits that we all love across the country is the Alfonsa mango, the Apus mango from Maharashtra. So when you look at the rising sun, at times when it comes with the hue of the redness with it, it looks like the Alfonsa mango. So Hanuman, being the mango lover that we are all mango lovers, so he thought that this must be a fruit and started jumping tree after tree. So he was unaware that the sun is miles away. He was a little child. So at that point in time, Tulasidas states in Hanuman Chalisa, Yuga Sahasra Yojan Par Bhanu Lilyotahi Madhur Phal Janu. Madhur Phal Janu. Phal is fruit. Madhura Phala, very tasty and sweet fruit. So Hanuman, thinking the rising sun to be a sweet fruit, Yuga Sahasra Yojana Par Bhanu. So when you keep all these words of Yuga, Sahasra, which is 1000, Yojana, which is 8 miles, Par Bhanu, and multiply it, you will get the distance between the earth and the sun. So even without most of the apparatus that he had in his hand, Tulasidas, casually sitting in one of the remotest villages of Uttar Pradesh, is able to tell you what is the distance between Mother Earth and the sun. So again, mathematics was not something that was treated as a separate subject like how it is treated today. It was integrated into everyday life while bringing the quintessence of Srimad Bhagavata Mahapuranam in Sanskritam through a work called as Narayaniyam in the 16th and the 17th century. A great poet par excellence called as Narayana Bhattadri in the Kshetram called Guruvayur, which is the abode of Lord Krishna, concludes Agnatvate Mahatvam Yadiha Nigaditam Vishwanatha Kshametaha Stotram Chaitat Sahastrottaram Adhikataram Tvatprasadaya Bhuyad Veda Narayaniyam Shruti Shucha Janusha Stutyata Varnanena Spitam Leelavatarei Ritamita Kurutam Ayurarogya Saukhyam. Those of them who read this work that is filled with devotion to Lord Krishna shall be blessed with long life and good health, both of which we all want, right? But Ayurarogya Saukhyam, Ayus, which is your lifeline or lifetime, Arogya, good health, Saukhyam, you will all be happy. So all of you will be happy listening to this shloka. But the poet doesn't stop there. He belonged to a secret school of mathematics called Sangamagramam, which was largely followed and nurtured in the state of Kerala. So he has embedded the date of his completion in this shloka. Ayurarogya Saukhyam. These are the 7 letters. From the units place, tens place, hundreds place, thousands place, if you multiply, 0 into 1, 0. U, ya, ra, la, va. So it is 1 into 10, 10. Ra, ya, ra, 2, 2 into 100, 200. So if you keep multiplying, you will arrive at a number which is something like 17 lakh 10,228, if I'm right. And that corresponds to the 27th of November of 1587, on the day on which he completed. So like how people who paint beautiful portraits would put their signature along with the date, the poet casually, by saying that you will get good life and good health, puts in the date. So this is the mathematics that went behind their minds. Well, all this is on paper. What is there for us to see? Well, if you can research and probably type on Google as you're listening to my talk now, the famous panel, the granite wood, solid rock panel of Bhagiratha Prayatnam. Bhagiratha was a king who was an ancestor to Lord Rama in Ayodhya. To bring about emancipation to his forefathers, who were a bunch of ashes, heap of ashes, he tries to bring Mother Ganga, Ganges, to earth. So he works very, very hard, perseverance. That is called Bhagiratha Prayatnam. He stands on one foot and performs austerities. Looking at his austerities, all the animals in the forest were perturbed, they were flabbergasted, and even the celestials were equally surprised. So they all come in an assembly and look at his act of performing penance. So this Bhagiratha Prayatnam, if you all type in Google, Bhagiratha's penance, space Mahabalipuram. Mahabalipuram is called Mamallapuram, a small heritage site very, very close to the capital city of Tamil Nadu called Chennai. Constructed by the Pallavas between the 5th and the 9th centuries, you will find this panel. You will find 2 boulders, and then there is a crevice in between. You know why? Because since Ganga had to come, this king had organized a fountain for the people of his city to see. So there was a water tank above the 2 boulders, and when the people in the city used to gather to look at the solid granite rock panel, the water used to flow between the crevices, and there is Bhagiratha on one side. So today, if we go to the multi-star hotels where we find fountains that work on electricity, imagine 1300 to 1400 years back, a Pallava king came up with the concept of a live fountain for the ecstasy of his own citizens. So architecture is very, very integral to our Vedic wisdom, because whatever is spoken in Ramayanam, whatever is spoken in Mahabharatam, whatever is spoken in Vishnu Puranam and Bhagavata Mahapuranam and many other pieces of literature comes to life when we look at the architecture. Architecture doesn't stop with the beauty as well, but it also raises a lot of questions about what devices did they have in those days. Let's take the Kailashanatha temple in the beautiful state of Maharashtra. If you go to the Kailashanatha temple, you will find that there is a mountain, and amidst the mountain is a small piece that has been scooped out. So when you buy a nice box of, say, blackcurrant ice cream, whatever flavor that you like, probably Delhi people would love to buy the Nirulas, probably some of you may love to buy the Baskin Robbins. So whichever brand, you buy ice cream, you buy a tub, and you will have to scoop the ice cream. Similarly, scooping happened in rock. You will all be surprised how tough it is to scoop in rock. And here, the entire temple is a monolith. It is not pieces of architectural wonders that were stuck together. It is a monolith. You can never afford to make a mistake in a monolith. So there was a mountain, and the person who would have designed and then allowed his group of people working under him to excavate and engrave on this temple, sculpt this temple, had gone from the top of the temple. So it was not a temple built from the bottom. See, when you construct a house, you do the foundation, ground floor, first floor, and second floor. Imagine you'll have to do it from the 3rd floor. So Kailashanatha temple in Maharashtra is a standing example of what precise decisions they made while sculpting. Well, if you go to cave number 3 in the Badami caves of the northern Karnataka, which was ruled by Chalukya kings, you'll be surprised to see 3D structures projecting from the ceiling. So how could you do that? Today we are given COVID shields, right, to protect our face when we go in flights. So there must have been shields in those days. Else, how could the person have sculpted it? Well, another very, very interesting feature. If you go to the Pancha Maharathas, the 5 Rathas, I would urge all my young friends. I'm sure there will be a mix of people who are not married and who are married. So if you're not married, make use of this time. You will have lesser responsibilities. Go to these places. If you're already married, take your family along. Take your children along to these beautiful places of architecture. I wouldn't discourage anybody from going to the Phuket Island or going to places in Thailand. I wouldn't discourage anybody from going to Bali in the archipelago nation of Indonesia. I wouldn't discourage anybody to go to the Niagara Falls seen from the Canada side or the US side. But yes, go to those places. But please do promote our domestic tourism. Our kings worked so hard to give these beautiful, monumental pieces of architecture. So when you go to Mahabalipuram, you will find the Pancha Maharathas constructed by the Pallava kings. There you will find an elephant. It's a monolith again. And the elephant will have 2 holes where there are supposed to be tusks. There'll just be 2 holes. You may be wondering, what has happened to those 2 tusks which were supposed to be in rock as well, granite as well? No. The kings in those days had a very good aesthetic sense. So we speak about mix and match today in designing, right? So they mixed and matched. So they had a beautiful elephant carved in granite stone with the holes meant to have the real ivory tusks of elephants that they would bring after a war. So there was a mix and match between 2 materials. So architecture is something that you will relish in every part of our country. Just because I've spoken about a few places of architecture, it doesn't mean I'm averse to the other places of architecture. Who will, every time I see a 100-rupee note, I don't see the value in it. I just see the Rani Ki Vav of Gujarat there. How beautiful it is for a wife to present to her husband a beautiful stepwell. So the carvings and the shades that you see of the rock cuts in that stepwell influence the textiles to come up with those kind of designs. So be it architecture, be it mathematics, be it literature, be it geography, we had people in the past who worked, toiled very, very hard for it. Now coming to another integral section, the last section where I would like to, I am in no position to advise anybody. I am in no position to suggest to anybody. I am a bundle of imperfections myself. But all that I can do is to just share whatever I've learned. The last section is, we as a land, though we were pioneers in geographical understanding, historical incidents that were documented in various forms of poetry, though we were pioneers in coming up with literature of different forms and different languages, though we were pioneers and people who came up with many, many concepts that the current day mathematicians and scientists appreciate, we were also a land of philosophers. Ultimately, after the land that I relish, after the food that I enjoy, after the dress that I wear, comes the last question which our acharyas have time and again asked us to ask. Who am I? Who is this? Why have I come on this earth? These philosophical questions, this philosophy in general is called Siddhantam. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳುವಾಗನು ಸಿದ್ಧಾಂತ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಹೇಳುತ್ತೀವಿ. ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳುವಾಗನು, in Kannada as well we say सिद्धांत. तमिल கூறும்போதும் सिद्धांतम என்றுதான் தெரிவிப்போம். हिंदी में जब बात करते हैं तब भी हम सिद्धांत ही बोलते हैं. तो फिलॉसफी होता है सिद्धांत. वो अद्वैत हो, विशिष्टाद्वैत हो, द्वैत हो, अचिंत्य भेदाभेद हो, केवल अद्वैत हो, जो भी, whichever form of philosophy, be it non-dualism, qualified non-dualism, dualism, the indistinct way, the inability to understand between the duality and the non-duality, whichever form of philosophy it is, our philosophers have insisted. Ask these questions to yourself. Who am I? Who is that I? When I'm addressing who am I, who is that I? If I say, for example, you ask me a question, who are you? I say, I am Dushyant. Our philosophers say, separate the sentence, I from Dushyant. Dushyant is the name of the body in this birth. I is the Jivatma which travels birth after birth. So remember that though by body we may be separated as the female body and the male body, though in the color I may be different from the person with a black complexion of Africa, from the white complexion of Europe, from the yellow complexion of China, whatever differences we have with respect to complexion, whatever differences we have with respect to gender, whatever differences we have with respect to height, short, tall, with respect to our obesity, some being very thin and fat, we are all the same Jivatma. The bodies can be different, but the Atma within our body is the same. So these differences is what that we see first. We don't see the Jivatma. When I see the opposite person, I see whether he's short or tall, whether it is a he or a she, whether he's white complexioned, yellow complexioned, or black, dark complexioned. This is what I see. But our philosophers state, you can reach the zenith of realization. You can reach the pinnacle of Sakshatkaram only when you cross these obstacles of external appearances and go into the Jivatma. The moment we see Jivatma, a person called Hussein who lives in Saudi Arabia, a person called John who lives in UK, a person called Ping who lives in China, and a person called Dushyant who lives in India is no different. We are all the same Jivatma. So the differences with respect to body, that is why, unlike many other world religions or civilizations, our ancient Vedic civilization says we are all one family. So to this country, which has given us so many forms of art and literature, different forms of knowledge, I am very grateful, like you are all, to this Mata Bharata Bhumi, and to that Bharata Mata, I offer my salutations and obeisances. And whatever we have been doing for our country is very little. We have a lot more, like how the famous poet says, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. We have many, many things, good things that we have to do for our family, for our society, for our state, and for our nation, thereby making our country, which was once the best ever land in many, many areas or arenas, once again, great again. As per the motto, Sreshta Bharat, we have to make this country Sreshta. For this, we, the young people, have to contribute very positively towards the nation building. Namaskaram. And I now hand it over to Ms. Kaur. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Dushyant Shridhar, for such an informative and productive session. So a few points from my understanding to take out from this session would be that for scriptures that are believed to impart only spiritual wisdom are in fact technical in nature. If you talk about architecture, literature, mathematics, or geography, Vedic ways do not only play a crucial role for the advancement of the Indian subcontinent, but also in the evolution of humankind as a whole. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in. Thank you so very much, Dushyant Shridhar. Ladies and gentlemen, do not forget to join us tomorrow, sharp at 10 a.m. for another day of fun-filled sessions and insightful speakers will be joining us tomorrow. This is your host, Sahib Jeet Kaur, saying goodbye for the while. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.